Hello everybody, this is part 4 of my life story, okay? So I've been doing this series. A lot of people on TikTok, they who follow me on TikTok or view my TikTok, they want to know my life story. They say, what's your story? So here is the series on my story. This is part 4. So let's get right into it, okay? So the last part of the story, where did I leave off? Where the fuck did I leave off? I think I had just gotten to that town outside of Atlanta, and I chilled with those kids for a while, those teenagers that were around my same age. When I was there, I was still 17 at the time, because I had just gotten arrested and bailed out by my mother all the way in North Carolina just for a little spliff, a tiny bit of weed. And so, yeah, I was chilling in that town for a while. It was pretty cool people there, But then after a few weeks, I went back to North Carolina. Okay, so at this point, it's around November 2014. And I had come back to New Bern, North Carolina, the town I grew up in most of my life. So, of course, when I first got back, I went to, honestly, I think when I first got back, I didn't go straight to my parents' house. And I think that upset them, I really think that upset them. They weren't prepared for that. They had their friend's mother drive me back, and I can't exactly remember, but I might have stopped there first. I might have, but I think I might have. I think I might have went somewhere else directly after. I have no idea, but I saw my mother and my stepfather and my siblings and my stepfather's parents. Like I said, at this point they had lost their house. So before I go too much further, let me briefly explain my family's financial situation, because and how my mother raised me. I saw this other person talk about online how my father was only 20 years old when he had me, or something like that, and we raised each other or something. And I'm like, okay, I guess people having children young is a thing that people look at and say, okay, this is a factor that influenced my upbringing. And I never really thought about it too much, until I saw that. So I thought, okay, yeah, my mother was 17 when she had her first child. My sister Samantha, my older sister, and she had it with this guy named Joe. Okay, Joe Capello, in Long Island, New York. Coincidence, right? She gets divorced, all that, yada yada. A couple months later, the marriage didn't last long at all. A couple months later, she had me at around 18 or 19. Okay, and she had me with another Joe Tamargo. So she went from Joe Capello to Joe Tamargo. Something about the name Joe, something about the name Joe really got her going, I guess. I don't know. Joe Mama, no. It's actually funny. Let me take a break to say that joke. It was years later, okay? Years later than where I'm at in my story right now. I think I was 21 or something, 21 or 22. And we're at this Christmas party. And my mom's scolding me. I remember it so much. My mom was scolding me so badly because I had called a lot of people in the family, and I had said, that day or the previous day, and I had said, hey, Joe's coming to your house today. And I wasn't thinking about my father, Joe, in New York. I really wasn't. Okay, every few years, I remember this joke, and I gotta tell it to everybody I know because I think it's so funny. And I try to find people who I don't think have heard of it before. You tell someone, hey, Joe said he's coming to your house today. and then maybe you add a little something extra to make it more believable. They say, Joe who? Say, Joe Mama. So I told, my brother was one of the people I told that joke to the day before, and my brother, my younger brother, Preston, I don't have any older brothers. I'm the oldest brother, of the family. But anyways, my brother, he's about a year and a half younger than me. He's in the Marines now, he's always been a real straight cut kid, very responsible and all this. And so, I remember when I was a teenager, I had this phone that my father in New York had sent me. He actually sent it down to my friend's house down the street, and my friend and their mom got it in the mail and let me have it. And so I was talking to my father on the phone in my room, but I shared the room with my brother. I went to go use the bathroom, and my father tells me that somebody was on the phone saying hello, and he just didn't say anything. I figured out it was my brother Preston, who was now acting like he's asleep. And then so after that, I hang up and I talk. I wasn't good at communicating. If I could have gone back in time, I think this would have been a great moment where we could have bonded. I could have talked to him, but instead my brother just talks bad about my father, and then I think we got in some fight or something. So maybe if he would have spoke to Preston, then it would have been better off, but he didn't say anything. So so years later, my mother told me that when I told my brother that joke, that his girlfriend, his fiance at the time, said his face got all red and he was at a restaurant and he just walked out of the restaurant, because he thought that meant that his father, because at this point in time, my brother was, about to go in the Marines, just graduated from high school, had a fiance now. And it was like a very, very important time in his life, where he's becoming a man. And I guess I didn't really consider that. And so he got to him, it was like, oh, this motherfucker's gonna come now, right now, and it hurts my heart because I almost think that there was some hope there, and some excitedness here there, even though it was very under all the feelings of hurt, so when he found out it was just a joke, I think that might have hurt him worse, so I feel bad about that. There's a lot of times in my life, actually, even though this isn't continuing the story, I think there's relevant stuff about my life, and I want to say here because I do care about my family, right? So there's a lot of times in my life, in my childhood, I specifically remember, just not being able to communicate to my brother or some other of my siblings in the way that, in a way that I could reach them, or in a way that I could properly explain myself, and we could bond, and I think some I have a mood disorder, bipolar, and I think there's more to it than that, because that's what I have officially. But I never went back to any, institution to try to get no more diagnosis. But I think back and I really, it really hurts my heart sometimes the bonding that we could have had, but there was a disconnect to where I just wasn't able to communicate properly. And I know that now, and I've done a lot of work to communicate better to people. So it's something I really realized. Like, I'll give you an example. One time, I have no idea why. Even now to this day, though not as much. When I was a child, it happened more often. I would get random nosebleeds. So one time, me and my brother have to be by ourselves at our stepfather's parents' house all day. Nobody else is there, and I had stayed up all night playing video games, so I felt I was sleeping all day. Okay, so the person who was supposed to be babysitting us, our aunt, wasn't gonna be back till like late that night, and so my brothers. I remember periodically waking up through the day, and my brother Preston, he's just sitting on the couch, and right next to me, just looking off into the distance, just looking everywhere. And thinking back, I feel bad because this could have been a moment where I was there for them as a big brother. There's a lot of moments where I felt like I could have been there for him as a big brother, but I failed, that really hurts me to this day because I didn't understand at the time, and I think if I was more properly able to communicate and understand, when I was younger, then I could have been a better big brother. And I think that did ultimately influence my younger brother to pursue that drastic route of becoming a Marine. I mean, in one sense, it's very beneficial to him. It gave him a life and stability that he wasn't gonna find in old New Bern, North Carolina, at Mama's house. So God bless him. But okay, so we're at my stepfather's parents' house, and I got a nosebleed in the middle of when I was in the middle of the day. I was still trying to sleep though, so I just walked over to the trash can in the kitchen and just hovered my nose above the trash can and just let it drip because I was so tired. I just didn't feel like communicating with anyone. And my brother is beside me, and he as soon as this happened, he's running over. He's like, Austin, what's going on, Austin, and he's trying to get me to respond, but I just didn't feel like responding to him. I was perfectly aware of my situation, but I just didn't feel like responding to him. So I just stayed there, my arms hanging over, and the blood dripping and I just imagined, like, man, that must have been like, we're like 12, 11, 12, 13 at the time, I just imagine it must have been, he must have been very confused. I just wish I would have communicated with him better, because, I think it would have been, it really would have helped things a lot. But anyways, let me stop regretting not being a bigger brother to my brother, and let's move on with the story, okay? I went on a whole tangent there. So I stayed in New Bern for a few months, and on Thanksgiving, I actually spent Thanksgiving at one of my friends' houses. My parents were mad, but this time I still didn't want to really hang out with them that much, even though they weren't trying to ground me, and they acknowledged my sovereignty as an adult, even though I was still 17. I still didn't want to spend too much time with them, and so after a few months, so let me go back to explaining that part. So my mother was 19 or 20 when she had me, like 21, 22 when she had the rest of her kids. My father was like a year or two older than her. Then they got divorced. When they moved down to North Carolina the first time, then they moved back to Long Island, New York. Then they moved back again. My mom moved back again a year later after she divorced my father. And long story short, a few years later, she marries this guy who's 7 years younger than her. So I saw this person make a post about how her father was like 20 years old and he was a young parent, and I'm like, okay, my mother was a young parent when she had us. Then a few years later, she's like, okay, I need me a young man. And so both of them, my mother and stepfather, I didn't think had much experience in raising children. But you know what? I gotta say they did try and give it their all. When we were kids and we weren't, when we became adults, it seemed like they pretty much gave up on life. Okay, they stopped paying their electricity, their water bill for good. Like there was times when they would go a year without water, electricity at their house, and the only reason they had a place to live is because my stepfather's parents, my stepfather's mother was a nurse, she's a retired nurse now. His father worked for the Department of Transportation for the state for 45 years and retired. So they're not rich, but they worked hard for the system and got their benefits of retirement and were managed your money well, you know. So they help out their kids. They bought my mom and stepfather a trailer out in the rural part of town. You know, they're pretty cheap out there. And but they I don't even know if they still have that place, because they stopped paying rent too. They wouldn't pay my stepfather's parents anything. They would just stay there, and with no electricity or water either. And they wouldn't even cut the grass. So periodically, so they didn't get fined, my stepfather's father had to come and cut the grass for them because they wouldn't even cut the grass. Okay, so let me get back to the story. So February, I remember it was around the time of the changing of the zodiac seasons, because I was real big into it then. Like February 21st to 22nd, I set out. And like I said last time, my friend said he was gonna come with me. And he ended up chickening out. Okay, so I was by myself. I think I explained this in my last video. It was raining, and I had a good thing. I had a big backpack. Like I said in my last video, I had a tarp, and I put the tarp over me while it was raining. But then whenever the train stopped, it was still raining, so I had to get out in the rain. And I was walking around in the rain. The first guy that saw me, he said, "Man, are you good, man?" And I was like, "Man, I just got here." Asked him where it was. He says, "You in Raleigh, man?" And he was like, "Here, man." He gave me $7, and he went about his way. So I stood outside the gas station, the grocery store for a while, and I was just out there asking for money, you know, doing the Spanish thing that the homeless people had taught me up north, you know. And so eventually this guy comes along, and he says, long story short, he offers me, he says I can stay at his crib. He's got an apartment for $20 a night. Okay. You know, I can't stay there during the day, but him and his girlfriend got a crib or whatever. And I think he's in his late 30s, early 40s, something like this, right? I'm like, okay, cool. I go back to his place. He's got a girl, his girl's in like her 20s, okay? And for the next few days, he tried to help me get some work there. I helped him with this other guy. It was really weird because he was working for this old white guy. It wasn't really work. He would go over to this old white guy's house, and the old white guy would just say, I mean, he was white too, but the old white guy would just say, yeah, empty out the trash cans, please. Empty out the trash cans in the house. And he'd be like, can you move those leaves? Basically just coming over to be some pity servant for some old man who doesn't want to do anything himself and wants to help some poor person out, I guess. Anyways, I earned some money helping that guy do random tasks around this old guy's house. And so I got enough for a bus ticket to Atlanta, because I'm like, that's my next destination is Atlanta. I wanted to go back to the city where I just spent all those months, met a lot of friends. I felt like I would be able to, you know, maybe even meet some other travelers there, some other people who were hopping trains and who wanted to travel with me, because my ultimate goal was to go all the way to California. So one time when I was there, when he wasn't there, his girl was kind of coming on to me, but nothing happened. You know, I just left. Because at the time I was 17 years old, you know. And like I said, I was very ignorant of the world, because my mother and stepfather growing up, they really did keep me in an isolated environment, even though I went to public school. you know, I was for many months and for much of the time when I was a teenager, I wasn't allowed to be on the internet, to play video games, to go on social media or anything, or to go outside and play with my friends or anything like that, because sometimes my grades were bad, sometimes they caught me smoking weed, you know, to try to cope with all the stress. But I guess they were very against me smoking weed. And you know, just little things like that. So um so yeah, I got the bus ticket. I headed to Atlanta and I got back to Atlanta. Now I'm 17 years old, back in Atlanta, and I spent a few more months there. Like a week or two after I got there, my mother is telling me that these bonds people in Atlanta just want to talk to me about my case or whatever. You know, that to do something with my case because I didn't finish my community service. So they told me to meet me, and they met me outside Little Five Pizza, you know, in Little Five Points. And you know, at the time I was 17, I was young and ignorant. I didn't understand that they were just gonna take me to jail. Like, yeah, we're gonna have to take you to jail. I'm like, fuck. So that's some advice for anyone. If the bonds person ever says they just want to talk, they actually just want to take you to jail. So I went to jail. I had to spend 2 weeks in jail, and you know, which was the original sentence anyway. So that whole bonding out didn't really do anything. But I had some good experiences in that jail, and as part of the ending of this video, I'm gonna tell some stories from my time in Atlanta jail. So when I first got there, right? When I first got there, these guys were making this whole. I forgot if this time they were making like the swole where you put all the ramen noodles and all the other ingredients in it, you know, or if they were making some juice drink or something. But they were making one or the other. When I walked up to them one time, and I was 17 years old, I was the only white person that I seen there, you know, and I forgot if I asked or something, or they offered. They said, hey, you know, give me half your food at dinner, and you can have some of this. So I was like, okay, that's a deal, and they gave me some, and I ate with them. And then at dinner time, you know, I'm ashamed to say this now, but I was looking around and I could not identify them, you know, because it was like hours ago, you know, and I had just got there. I hadn't really met anyone. I just remember when I first got here hours ago, these two guys, and I couldn't identify them because, you know, please forgive me, but I was the only white person there. All the rest were black people, and I'm not saying at all that all black people look the same at all, because I have, you know, I know I can identify people and their races and confuse me, okay? But at the time, I don't know why, I seriously could not remember who exactly the guys were. So I'm looking around, I'm walking through the whole table area, and I'm just looking at everyone trying to find them. And then this guy comes up to me. He's like, he's like, oh, right here, come on. He's like, oh, I'm not. So I said, oh, I'm sorry, man, I couldn't find you. You know, I couldn't find you. And he's like, oh, he said, oh, you good? So I start dividing up half of everything of my food. And the other guy, who was the actual guy who I owed the who I owed the half my trade to, he comes up right as this guy starts doing this, and he's like, "Man, get the fuck out of here, man." He's like, man. He's like, "Man, it was me who you gave it to." I was like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry, man. Like I forgot who it was." And then he's like, "Man, you good? Come sit with us, man." And so I went to his table. I start trying to take my food off my tray. And he's like, "Man, nah, eat your fucking food, man." He was like, eat. Now I'm getting my stutter. He was like, eat. Now I'm stutter. Maybe I need to slow down, take a deep breath. He was like, eat your food, man. He said, "I don't want your food. He said, "I don't want your food. I want you to eat." And I really appreciated that. That meant a lot to me. And so for the next 2 weeks, week and a half, I sat with them, and they were real nice guys, real cool with me, This jail actually had a basketball and a basketball hoop. A few years later, in North Carolina, when I was in jail, and any other jail I've been to, they never had no basketball goals. So that was really fun, At any point during the day, you could just go outside and play basketball. A lot of people didn't play basketball. A lot of people would just sit inside and watch TV, which was even better because most of the time you could just go out there and shoot some hoops by yourself, So, at the time, I had just been through all this spiritual hippie stuff. So I'm thinking I know the spiritual knowledge. And me and this other guy in the basketball court are arguing about God, and I'm talking about God is everything, everywhere, and so it got a little bit more deep than that, but I'm not gonna go further into the religious discussion here. Anyways, that same guy did something later, like a few days later. It was Sunday, and these ministers had come in from a local church, and I always remember these ministers. They were so tall, so very tall, old black men, very tall, and both of them were very tall yet looked very healthy, very tall and skinny and lengthy, but looked very healthy. They didn't look like anorexic or nothing. They were just skinny, but they looked healthy, And they were lecturing us about drinking water, making sure you drink water. That's one of the lesser things, like the least important thing I think they spoke about. But they were talking about water. But they said something else that really stuck to me always. They said you're supposed to actually drink water like an hour before or an hour after you eat. You're not actually supposed to drink water while you're eating because it could harbor digestion. Now, to this day, I need to verify it. I need to go online and check it out. To this day, that perplexes me because I honestly think, like, aren't you supposed to drink when you're eating to make the food go down easier? That's what I've always thought. But apparently, they even had a little pamphlet talking about how you're not supposed to eat, an hour. You're not supposed to drink an hour before or an hour after you eat. And part of me has always thought that this must be some old person thing, like when old people need to worry more about their digestion, and they just thought everybody should worry about it more. But I still do not understand it because, when you go to a restaurant, they give you a drink with your meal. So if anyone has any answers to this, please let me know because I've been too lazy to Google it, I guess. Anyways, so they're telling us a lot about the heaven, and all this, and about the spirits and the battle between the dark spirits and all this stuff. So in the middle of it, in this jail, in the jail in North Carolina where I come from, that I went to a few years later, like everybody had to stay locked behind their cells and the preacher would preach to everybody. But in this jail, if you want to go to church on Sunday, you all went into a special room with the two preachers. So you know you didn't have to go to church if you didn't want to. So we went in the room with the preachers, and after they're talking to us for a while, the same guy who I was arguing about God with just randomly comes in the room, and he starts going on this rant, and I forgot how he started it, but he starts talking about how heaven is real. He's like, heaven is real, and it's a whole layer of purple. It's purple everywhere. He's like, I've seen it. And he goes on this whole rant, and it always stuck to me, right? And he goes really on this long rant about this purple energy, right? And then after he left the room, and of course I did know about the chakras, how purple is the seventh chakra, you know. And you know, none of us said anything, and then he walked out, and I looked at one of the preachers, I looked at the other. One of the preachers was smiling, the other one, I looked at the other one, and he just had a stern face. You know, just a regular face. And then the second one, when I looked at him, he's like, there was a lot of truth to what that brother had just said. And then the other one was like, yep. And I always remember that. I always remember that moment. You know, it was something that could have been in a fucking movie. I swear to God. The way that it was so mystifying. The way that this guy comes in after we had a heated religious debate a few days ago, and then we're having church, and he comes in and proclaims this great vision of heaven that he's seen, and then the preachers are like, well, there's a lot of truth to that what that brother had just said. And I was like, and then I believed it. I was like, I didn't say anything, but I was like, okay, that's an affirmation, confirmation, it's all true. You know, so that was pretty interesting. So I'll finally end this video, because I usually only make these videos like 20 minutes long. Okay, so this has been a very long one. So I'll end this video explaining when I got out of jail, because there's still a lot more to cover here. There's still so much more to cover here. I haven't even left Atlanta yet for the second time. So I'm gonna explain getting out of jail. So I got out of jail like a day early, you know, and I took to the guy and said, I'm supposed to get out tomorrow. He's like, looks like it's your lucky day, you know, but it's actually because they have so many inmates, they gotta release people early, you know, especially for petty crimes. You know, they shouldn't be even bringing people to jail for no damn spliff with a tiny bit of weed in it anyways, but whatever. I'm not gonna continue complaining about it. But anyways, so I get released, and I'm in 5 Points downtown. That's what somebody in the comments actually commented on this video, and on one of my last videos of the series, talking about how when they were homeless in Atlanta, they were at 5 Points downtown, and said it was a scary place. And it actually, you know, I would hesitate to call it scary, but it is a dangerous place. You know, in a place that you have to be careful. You gotta be careful in Big 5 Points, okay? They got motherfuckers from all different types of gangs out there. You know what I'm saying? Motherfuckers huddled by the trash can, by the fire burning trash can, ready to get what you got if they catch you slipping. You know what I'm saying? They all out there. But and little 5 Points. You know, little 5 Points isn't always some safe haven either. You know, a lot of stuff goes down there, and East Atlanta is actually right just down the road from Little 5 Points. It's technically almost East Atlanta, Little 5 Points, but Little 5 Points is a completely different area than Big 5 Points downtown. Big 5 Points downtown is like it's just. There's none of the culture or nothing of it. It's just mainly government buildings and other homeless people in gangs, people trying to pull schemes, and very important business people walking around during the day. But so it's a very different place than Little 5 Points. But when I first got released, this older black guy, I met was homeless also. And I would hang out with a lot of homeless people there. So it wasn't out of the norm for me to just walk up to this black homeless guy and ask him what's going on. And then so he's like, man, we're trying to get some bub, man. And so he's like, man, just he sends me on a little mission or something. He's like, man, go try to see if you can get like $3, man. He's like, I got two. You know, we're gonna make this work. I was like, okay, you know. I will go around, start trying to raise $3 somehow. I get back to him. He has a little bit of weed. He's like, okay, man, come on, let's smoke a little bit of weed, man. He's like, you hungry, man? You hungry? Pulls out this thing. He's got a bunch of lunch meats and bread. I'm like, nah, man, no, actually, this time I did. I was like, yeah, man, hell yeah, man, I just got out of jail. He's like, okay, man, you make yourself a sandwich, man. And he starts putting the weed in the pipe. I'm making myself a sandwich. Start eating the sandwich. He passes it to me. It was a really nice night. And then I was like, all right, man, I gotta get back to Little 5 Points. He's like, all right, man. So I went back to Little 5 Points. When I got back to Little 5, I had to walk there. I don't know how far of a walk it is. Maybe an hour or two or three. I don't know. Got back to Little 5 Points and I had just been in jail for 2 weeks, you know. So no weed, no alcohol, because I was drinking sometimes when I was in Atlanta too, even though I was only 17 years old. No alcohol, no weed, no tobacco, nothing in that jail, no good food either. So when I got to Little 5 Points, I went overboard. I went crazy, okay? Every single person that passed me, I was in the main little park area. Every single person that passed me that had a leftover food box, I would ask them for it. And I would start eating that motherfucker. These nice burgers, I'm eating. Next thing I saw some pizza, hey, can I have your leftovers? Eating the pizza. and then every time I saw some cigarette, can I have one of your cigarettes? Smoking a cigarette. Every time I try to raise money for some weed, smoking the weed. Every time I see another homeless person drinking, let me get a sip of that. Let me throw it on the beer. I was drinking, smoking, eating everything, trying to get everything, trying to get all of these sensations I haven't had, all these endorphin rushes I haven't had in 2 weeks. And then I got the biggest headache that I can remember. The biggest headache. So, oh my God, it was such a big headache. You know, I get headaches periodically, but this was a killer headache, I'm telling you. Like, I had consumed and did way too much. I was eating so much, smoking so much, dude. It's too much. You know, my head just started killing me. So then I go to the store, okay? I go to the gas station. I stand outside and I start asking people if they can get me headache medicine. So this hippie guy comes. One of the first people that comes is this hippie guy and his girlfriend, okay? And the hippie guy says, oh, you don't need medicine. You just need to go meditate, you know, and try to find out why the pain is there or something. So I was like, okay, you know what? You're right. Because I was very susceptible to the spiritual nonsense, you know, and the idea that you can influence your reality with the power of your mind. So I was like, okay, you're right. So I go 2 blocks away. I sit under a tree. I start to lay down and I start to meditate. I literally sat there for like an hour, maybe more, and it only got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I was like, yo, fuck this fucking hippie. I was like, that fucking hippie. I was so fucking mad. I got up and I hit the ground and said, fuck that fucking hippie. I went back to the gas station. And I started asking people again. I'm like, please, can you give me some headache medicine? It's so bad, please. And then finally, like, second or third guy goes and gets me some headache medicine. It only took like 5 or 10 minutes. You know, I just wasted a whole hour of my headache getting worse and worse because some fucking hippie guy sold me this bullshit. Sold me as in not really selling me something, but told me something that I believed, that I shouldn't have believed. Anyways, so yeah. So that's the story of my first day out of jail in Atlanta. So I'm sorry guys, this has been such a long addition to the story, and in the beginning of this video I really explained a lot of my upbringing instead of continuing from where we left off, and then I catched people up. I explained stuff that I already explained in the last video for some of it, but you know, like I said, some people don't understand. I've had a very complicated life, okay, and if people really want to know me and understand me for who I am, which you know I will be really impressed if there are actually people who want to do that, then I think all this information is relevant, you know, and I think every piece of the story really adds to it to really understand me as a person, you know, and my story. So in part 5 of my story, I literally thought, I really thought that this part 4 of the story I was gonna explain me going all the way from Atlanta to California, and at least start explaining when I was in California at 17, but we didn't even get close to there. And I almost want to keep on going because I'm like, I might as well just keep on fucking going. But at the same time, this is already gonna take like hours to upload, and you know, I doubt anyone wants to watch much longer. You know, for right now, you know, they might want to watch another video later. But this has been a very long video. So if anyone's watched all of this to the end, God bless you so much. Thank you so much for listening. And I feel very grateful that you find this interesting. So God bless you. Please subscribe. Please like. Please comment on any part of the story, any part of it, and give your opinion if you can. That would be much appreciated. So yeah, appreciate you guys so much. God bless you.